Hey guys, Tryptic here with another replay, the aforementioned other one I'm doing today. This occurred immediately after the previous game. Well, okay, after about 15 minutes of arguing and finally sorting things out. And possibly another one in between that crashed immediately. I don't remember exactly. I'm going to let you guys know right now this game ends in a crash. We didn't actually resolve it. And it was a really good game, too. Well, it doesn't end in a crash. One of the players lost internet. But anyway, I wanted to be fair and let you guys know that that happened. But it's a really good game. So this is a 4v4, and yeah, it's in the previous game, the green player that I couldn't remember was Ugly the Great. And then in this game, green is LIMON, who took over for him. So it's a 4v4, and after the last game where we were discussing how the difficulties Borg has in large games, it's fundamental because, like I say, for people who aren't too familiar with it, we've talked about this. There's a very strong critical mass for some ships in these games, where, for example, if you're fighting 4 enemy ships, you kill 1 or 2 of them, and then your sphere, your large Borg ship gets out and doesn't die, and you lose absolutely nothing. But if there's 5 or 6 enemy ships, depending on the size, they kill you, and you lose your sphere, and you lose absolutely everything. And a lot of ships in this game have that, where they're really, really strong up until a certain point. And other ships have things where they're kind of weak when there's only one of them, and they get really, really strong when there's several of them. Like, they start to scale exponentially. And we were discussing that and how Borg tend to struggle in big games because when you're in even if it's a 4v4 to overall, an individual battle might only be a 2v2 or a 3v3 or a 2 versus 1. And if you have a sphere, and your sphere might hit its threshold a lot faster than it normally would. Like, if the sphere is normally, it would be it would be fine when there's 6 ships, but there's 12 ships because there's 2 enemies there. So Borg in big team games definitely struggle. But I did have a really good game. I've had games in the past where I thoroughly messed up. And not to toot my own horn, but I feel I played relatively well in this game. I picked Borg because I figured it was fair. I got after I did so well as Romulans in the previous game. Although also, it's a very large map, and the larger map makes it a little bit more merciful on Borg. Because Borg mining is harder to raid for small numbers of ships. You need a bigger fleet to raid Borg, and so a very big map with a long run distance kind of helps the Borg out. So yeah, this map, I forget which one it is. I think it's Iradi. It might be one of the other ones. I'll post it in the description. It has a lot of moons. So as you can see here, there's my home base, and there is a dilithium moon in the corner of each map point, each corner of the map. There's an expansion directly above me. There's also a dilithium moon and a tritanium moon off on the side. So like, you see where my base is, directly above it there's the blue bit. There's a moon pair on both sides of that. And then there's the center moon pairs. There's like a center dilithium, or maybe it's a full pair in every gap. There's 4 gaps that separate the top and the bottom, and then there's a purple nebula in the middle you can fly through. So, very, very well-fortified, high-income map here. And you'll see the middle players, like the anchor position, the back middle, which is yellow and orange in this game, they only get 2 moon pairs, and they don't have the best expansion options, although they can take the corners if someone agrees to it, or something like that. But the wing players have the most expansion to do, and I basically spent my entire starting income on these miners, and I was building Borg miners for a very long time, very expensive. But I did build 1 scout cube because I wanted to go raid with it, and you'll see because in this case you get in these scenarios where it might not even be worth it to fortify your mining. Like it's certainly not for Borg, but like you could buy a turret for every single moon, but then they might raid with more. It's a question of how much do you defend each of your mining positions when you have so many of them. And you want to do, as I mentioned in the previous replay, you want to do some economic damage, but you really don't want to set yourself back too far. And as you can see on Borg, I have Collective Connections. It's the green resource. It costs 10 for the Scout Cube, and other than that, the only things that matter is it costs 50 for a sphere, and it costs 100 for a diamond. So, and that just gathers over time, and you can spend resources of that conduction matrix to increase the speed at which you get them over time. And these upgrades get expensive really fast. You could be paying 1,500 dilithium just to increase the rate, and you want to upgrade it as fast as possible because you're getting it over time. So, on my team, we had pretty sure yellow's Jokarrr. Yeah. So we had Jokarrr, and then we had WarpCore on the left, which means he had a fair amount of income, and we had MightyMaster in the middle as Teal. He was Dominion, and I think WarpCore was Klingon. So those guys, oh yeah, so I was like, hey, I'll go raiding, and then there's already S2s out there from Drayzon, who was also Dominion. S2s, as I mentioned, very fast, very high offense, low defense, and they die pretty fast in later games, but they're very dangerous, and they have the exact same speed as the Scout Cube, so I was surprised to see he'd already claimed that. And that's one of the things Borg just can't do. Like, when there's a center moon pair exactly between you and your opposition, Borg cannot claim it, and that's something that I find kind of frustrating. In Tryptic's mod, which this is not, I've tried to make it so Borg can hold positions a little bit better, but they're still not the best at it. Like, they can get in my version, they can get an adaptation matrix which automatically has allied repair, even though they can't repair their own stuff, and they could play a Dode, but it's expensive still. So yeah, and once again, this is Star Trek Armada 2 Fleet Operations mod, Admiral's Edition submod, version 1.13, Drayzon's edit, including, and then with Drayzon's textures and sounds, although the sound is not recorded in this one. I'll be improving my stuff. That's why you'll notice in some of these videos the torpedoes are all a lot flashier. They're like bright points of light. That's Drayzon's edit. And Tryptic's mod currently uses the regular textures, which you'll see the difference in some of these videos. So here I am realizing, well, I'll get to 50 eventually, and I'll get a sphere. I was feeling kind of outclassed by how fast Drayzon got those S2s. Like, I was like, if he wants to raid me, I can't stop him. Not unless I wanted to go Dodes, and I didn't really want to go Dodes. There I saw those miners going over there. I was like, oh, I didn't know where the Tritanium moons was. I was like, I wonder where those are going. I was like, but I'll just go back and kill some miners, you know. If I stop his mining for a minute, that's 450 dilithium I blocked, which is the cost of the sphere, of the Scout Cube. So I was like, you know, if I knock, and there's the cost of the miners that have to be replaced, so, which 3 miners is about 400. So I was like, yeah, if it kills one base of miners, it's kind of paid for itself, although not really because of the collective connections. That's the rough part about Borg in this version. And I think right around this time, spoiler alert, I'm going to get raided. So yeah, everybody is kind of debating, okay, how much do we raid the enemy, how much do we expand entirely, and how much do we defend ourselves? The white Federation player is MMartok, and looking at his stuff, I think I scouted him a little bit, and I noticed he had a mixed tech yard, which gives people some interesting options. Sometimes it gives people options ahead of time, and I was concerned because orange, which is Patawan, is Romulans, and I was like, oh no, he's going mixed tech cloaking Defiance, because in this version the mixed tech Defiant does not require chassis 3, so you can actually get a lot faster than you can get the regular Defiant. It's not that way in Tryptic's mod, but so I was really worried. I was sitting there and I was like, oh no, he's gonna get cloaking Defiance. What does Borg have that counters cloaking Defiance? And the answer is nothing, because the Borg do not have pulses. The Borg have these little adapted photon torpedoes, and their thing is they do bonus damage to small, similar to pulses, but they do way more. in regular, pulses do 25% bonus to small. Adapted photons do 70% bonus to small. In Tryptic's mod, they only do 40%, but it's still a big deal. But their reduction is not against large, their reduction is against battleships. They do like 70% reduction reduced against battleships. And the Defiant is a medium battleship. So Defiant's hard counter scout cubes and dodecahedrons because they use adapted photons. It's not really beaten by adapters. And because it deals bonus damage to long range, it does okay against diamonds, although the pulse damage, diamonds are, nah. I mean, if I want to get diamonds, but... And then I was like, it's spheres, I guess. So I was really panicking. I was so sure I was going to get killed by Cloaking Defiance, but it turns out that was not what he was going for. There it is. So yeah, Drayzon, he didn't go for the immediate large yard, which I think put him at a slight disadvantage against MightyMaster, who went straight for large yard and didn't build any small ships. But there were 6 S2s, and I had actually forgotten. He did tell me he was going to do this. Like, he told me when I went Borg, he was going to come kill me off early, and I was like, okay, that's entirely fair. Like, let's explore the balance of this. There, I make it to my first sphere, and I go triple regen, prime. As I've mentioned before, because the Borg have survivability problems in big games, that's why I go for the regenerate spheres. It tends to be a tough call between the regenerate sphere and the beam sphere, because in this version the beam sphere has an ability that you activate it and it reflects beam weapons for a pretty long duration. So if the enemy has any amount of major beam damage, the beam sphere can reflect it and avoid it and send some of that damage back, which could do a lot of damage to a fleet of something like those S2s. But as I mentioned in my other video, it does split damage, and I'm really glad I went with the regenerate spheres, because now I understand you can't get spheres as fast in this version as you can in Tryptic mod. In Tryptic's mod, the income per minute of every moon is increased. You get 600 dilithium per minute instead of 450. So, and you're not limited by collective connections. It's all based on money. You have to pay money to get more. So you can get spheres a whole lot faster in Tryptic's mod than you can in this one. And in that case, you can get those 5 beam spheres. Also in Tryptic's mod, the damage specials, like high energy slicer of the sphere, you get earlier and it does a lot more damage. So you can get beam spheres, they spread their damage over every target, but then you use the high energy slicer ability to kill single ships. In this version, I tested out a bit, and high energy slicer is horribly weak, and you're only going to have 1 or 2. So my personal opinion is you want regeneration spheres in this version rather than beam. That is 3 regen modules and then a prime or something else. I like prime in this case, but that's just because it has higher stats. It has higher offense. So yeah, you saw, I knew that I was going to get decloaked on by something when I saw that those Neurexans were coming out. So the moment that Neurexan decloaked on me, I was like, nope, I'm going to go. And yeah, that Scout Cube is just going to go try to find another expansion to kill. Make back its money, basically. And I do like it. There is also the mental resource. There is the mental resource of a human being's attention. And when you keep on hitting them and pinging them in various places, this is something Jokarrr is relatively good at, even though he's not super good at the big fleet fights. A lot of our, Jokarrr, and honestly, Patawan, I think, has done okay with it sometimes, although he is more of a fleet building character. A lot of our players who are new, when you're brand new to the game, if you want to have the biggest impact on a team game, maybe not go for the whole fleet and the fleet fight. I mean, you should have a bit of fleet to be able to support. But in a 4v4, if you're a new player, you can get by pretty well by just going and raiding. If you just constantly... Oh, there's Jokarr's. Pardon me. Sangs and Burrells. And because there were those 6 S2s during the game, I didn't even realize there were so many, 6 of them. Because Drayzon built those S2s early, he didn't have a very strong response to Star Master Prodigies. Those are actually... this is a Drayzon's mod replacement. Those are B8s. That's the B8 War Frigate from Tryptic's mod and regular fleet ops, which Drayzon replaced with the Galler. It's a different model, but it's the same ship. It's a long-range pulse torpedo firing, so it kind of does even damage to all types. But the trick is it's forward firing. So the B8 has very good stats. Oh, actually, so he didn't go to large yard because it is a small yard ship. I take it back. MightyMaster did not start with large yard. But the B8, it's a tricky one because it's not good at retreating. It has very good stats for when it comes in the game, but if it has to turn around and run, it will probably die because it can't shoot back. It does have a special, which is an area engine disable. It has to drop the little bomb, and then a few seconds later, the bomb disables engines on everything nearby. So B8s are a fantastic ship. I love them, like flavor and balance-wise, because they sort of help a lot of your Dominion fleet. A lot of your Dominion ships can only shoot forward, and so the B8 can drop the bomb, and it can help you escape. A fleet without B8s has a harder time escaping. However, those B8s versus, or those Gallers versus S2s was going to be kind of rough because the S2s deal bonus damage to long range, which is what the B8s are. So he lost some of them, had to retreat. I unfortunately didn't look over and see too much of it, and I know that Jokarrr was also scouting and raiding a bit. Now, one of the things I do in this game, I think I did pretty good with scouting. I did that in previous game as well, where I had 3 scouts out. This game I usually have 2 or 3 out. Because of this map, oh shoot, yeah, I went after Patawan's home try, got attacked, and ran. Whoop, whoop, whoop. That's a 140 speed unit there. That's the fastest in the game. Well, there's a small number of things that hit 150 speed with specials, and scouts have 180, but normally the fastest combat ships are small short-range ships with 140 range. So yeah, that scout cube, it can't kill anything, but it does bonus damage to small, which is what the miners are, so it just goes and kills stuff. So yeah, MMartok. Oh right, this is when I learned MMartok had gone Dominion mix tech, which gives you Ocuras with extra torpedo launchers. So normally they're beam torpedo. These ones are just it's almost all torpedo. So they are good at killing Borg. And then you also get the Miranda 2, which is an odd ship. I'll explain later when we see more of them. But the Ocuras, they're because he did the mix tech yard, and I was actually technically doing just about the fastest sphere possible. You don't get too much faster than the way I built it here. The Ocuras were not too big of a threat for me. But yeah, he sends an Ocular down to my bottom right, and I have to go deal with that because... So I have this sphere, and there's like nothing that can kill this sphere. I mean, this sphere could just about kill 6 S2s by itself. In fact, yes, it could, if they stayed and fought. The problem would be the S2s were so much faster, because they're also 140 speed. If the S2s were engaging me, he'd be able to run some of them away. So, like, if this sphere had fought that fleet... I don't know, I maybe would have killed 1 or 2, but probably he would have just run them away. But he wouldn't have been able to kill the sphere because it not only has its full hit points, it has its energy reserves, which can be used for the regeneration special. So the sphere can't die right now, but there's only one sphere and it's a big map. So I just have to fly the map, I have to fly it around and do as much damage as possible. And that was when I learned that Drayzon had already set up mining at all of these moons. So he has his home mining too. So he's going out of 4 dilithium moons. And I've made it up to 3 at this point, but I was concerned that Drayzon he really put a lot of undefended mining expansions out here, and it was good that I was able to kill them, but the whole time I'm there, he knows where my sphere is, and I only have 1, and as you see, my allies were starting to get whomped a little bit. Oh, right. Let me introduce the players now that you can see their positions. So the green Dominion in the top left is LIMON. The orange Romulan in the top middle is Patawan. The white Federation was MMartok. The red Dominion is Drayzon. And then the purple Klingon and the yellow Klingon are WarpCore and Jokarrr. The teal is MightyMaster. He was Dominion. And then I am the blue Borg. And I found another undefended mining expansion. I did get to kill a lot of things. And at the time, I thought I was doing really badly because my allies were fighting, and they were fighting 2-on-1. Well, yeah, because MightyMaster, I guess he did have, it's hard to tell on the minimap that there's purple there, but I guess WarpCore was there. So they were kind of fighting 2-on-2 on the left. MMartok didn't have very much because he was really investing into his production. He got several mixed tech yards, and he was expanding his mining, and I raided the crap out of him, you know. I'd blown up 2 moons worth, which he had to replenish. So I was kind of keeping MMartok back in that I was dealing some economic damage, and he was building up and I was building up. Drayzon was doing all this expanding, which I also got to blow up. Patawan was, you know, he is relatively new, so he doesn't macro as hard as everyone else, and also he only has 2 moon pairs. But he was getting Nurexons. Like I said, the torpedo Nurexon deals bonus damage to long, so sometimes you get kind of pre-counters in place, which is how I think of it when you build something that counters what your opponent is going to build next. And that's why Nurexons are almost never a bad call in a game like this, because they know I want to build diamonds eventually. Like, I want to build diamonds. And so building Nurexons that deal bonus damage to long range is a good call, because eventually I'm going to want to build diamonds. Oh, in this case, yeah, so MightyMaster had taken this mining, and then he got raided, and then I told him, since it would be a pain for him to take it, and because my Borg miners are so much stronger, I told him, you know what, I will just mine this moon and I will give you all the money from it. So, and because I didn't upgrade my nodes super high this game, I was so low on collective connections, I started feeding my allies like crazy, which honestly I think is one of the ways to do it in a team game when you're sharing resources. Because, like, man, I would have had to drop like 2,500 more dilithium into nodes levels, and that would have let me build ships a little bit faster. I think my money was better spent handing it off to the other guys, honestly. So yeah, so I have 2 spheres. I had to send 1 all the way back, and that Jokarrr did its job too. Honestly, he probably could have done the same job with like 1 monsoon, but that 1 Jokarrr, it forced me to send my sphere all the way down to the bottom right corner, and then it was like, well, great, I got a powerful regen sphere, but the fight is happening in the middle left, and my stuff is so out of position. And I think at around this time, oh yeah, Patawan had sent some miners over here, and I don't know why. I don't know if he was going to give them or if he thought there was some moon pairs over here, but a lot of them ran into my scout cube, which was happy to kill them. Sadly, Borg do not get any experience in this version, so don't rank up or anything. So yeah, around this time, as you can see, my spheres have really bullied the right side. I've blown up a ton of miners. But I'm also getting kind of nervous, because if you're Borg in this scenario, you have to be doing this. If you are not, if they're building up, if you're facing a Federation and the Federation player is building up as much as the Borg player is building up, the Federation player is going to win. He's going to get some crazy stuff, especially since I wasn't getting diamonds yet. So if it was good that I was killing all these miners. I did quite a lot of economic damage, but you also need to understand, if I hadn't, I would be dead. Like, if I had not raided this stuff, it would not be even. They would be ahead of me. And so I don't know if I had made us cut even. A lot of this did depend on the battles that were going on the left, which a lot of the time I didn't watch because I wasn't thinking about this recording. Sorry, guys. But yeah, there's a big old slugfest over there. Yeah, we had lots of Vutpa, which I'd mentioned before. So the Vutpa have dodge chance against torpedoes, which the Nurexons have, but the Miranda 2s have pulse weapons, so they actually don't miss the Vutpa very much. And so to talk about the Miranda 2, so the Miranda 2 is an odd ship. Its combat stats are not too good. It's a long-range cruiser with beam and pulse weapons, so it actually does bonus damage to small, and it does slightly reduced damage to large. And it has high defense, so it's just really tanky, and it actually has a passive that makes it take reduced damage from enemies with low offense. It actually has the same passive as the tactical cube, so which in this case we didn't have a lot of. But if you had something like monsoons, they would do almost no damage. Well, they would do reduced damage to the Miranda 2s because of that high... It's extra shield generators or something. Oh yeah, here was a tough choice. So Drayzon is sending miners to his expansion. and I want to kill them, but I can't because I have to send my spheres to go help the team fight. Like, I was telling these guys, I was like, look, it's going to take me like 2 minutes to get over there with these spheres. I'm sorry. Like, can you wait 2 minutes? And they were like, no, we can't wait 2 minutes. We're dying. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm going. And I knew, and I looked at this and I was like, oh, Drayzon's just going to send his guys over there. He's going to mine thousands of dilithium off of this expansion, and I can't stop him because the spheres have to go. So the spheres just fly past the miners, and they're like, okay, you kids have fun stealing these moons. We're just going to get involved. So I put holding beam on the second one because it does help with high value targets. When you put a holding beam, a Borg holding beam on something, it does set it to a boarding status, which it basically means your other ship stops shooting at it. It's an AI thing. So you can holding beam something and then manually target it, but you have to keep on manually targeting it because your ships will cancel after every volley. Every time they shoot a shot, they'll cancel because the holding beam's on it. But you can still like force it to hold a unit out of position, or you can force fire. And I've found there's just cases where, you know, you really want to holding beam something, and kill it. Like they might be next to a repair yard, and they might be right next to a repair yard and like turning into it, and you just holding beam them and kill them real quick, instead of them going back up to full health for free. Oh yeah, so there my scout cube is going around. And you'll notice I did mess up my economy several times. Like, I sent those guys to mine tritanium and then forgot about them. And I was overflowing die for so much of it. I'm bad at managing Borg economy. That's part of why I changed it in Tryptic's mod. Like, this is one of my better Borg economy games. I have some games where I mess it up so badly. And here, LIMON actually was the one. He was the one to find the answer. The answer is to build one phaser sentry at your moon pair. And now my one scout cube can't kill it anymore. And you can tell he actually started building it before he even got there. So I don't think I look at that scout cube again. I didn't kill his miner before he finished the turret. The turret finishes, and I'm pretty sure it just kills the scout cube, and I completely forget it was there. So yeah, so here I was like, okay, it's time to go for the big tide swinger. And actually, this moment, I had a whole lot of respect for Drayzon in the previous game, because this was when I understood how freaking expensive it is to get to nanite diamonds. Shoot, that transmission matrix and the 100 cc's, like, I felt like I had waited 5 minutes between building a ship, which I might have actually. No, shoot, I take it back. This game is, 28 minutes in, and I have 2 spheres, so I think I built the first run around like 15 and then maybe 20. So yeah, somewhere around there. I had gone about 10 minutes without building a ship at that point when that diamond started. And you could see, like, I've built 3 combat ships. The diamond is my 4th combat ship this entire game. But I had that scout I stole. And there are several times where I did think I did okay with scouting. I sent scouts ahead. Oh yeah, here we were having this discussion where WarpCore is like, "Hey guys, are you coming?" And I was like, "Maybe. Do you want to?" And we were like, "Well, MightyMaster is going to build some more ships if I give him more money." And he was like, "Well, we could just wait. Like, we don't have to fight." Oh, I'm sorry, I completely forgot the Miranda 2s. So the Miranda 2s have a special ability called Blockade Breaker. And the Blockade Breaker tooltip is not super accurate to what it does. So the Blockade Breaker gives it like plus 20 offense or something, or like 25. It's a lot. And like plus 20 defense. It doubles the rate of fire of its pulses, and it increases their miss chance against things that it can miss against, like cruisers and destroyers. Or, I mean, mediums and small. But against large targets, they do just fine. So when the Mirandas are in Blockade Breaker mode, their damage is just huge. And their defense is so tough. Like, they're just chunks of hit points, which I was concerned about. But I think he had already used Blockade Breaker, and he was recharging at this point. So I come in with my spheres, and you see Starmaster Prodigy came in. The Keldon that he has there is actually it's a replacement for the S7 Defender, which is a long-range ship that takes reduced damage from long range, and it's very slow, is what that is. So here, I was actually saying, guys, we need to focus on the Norexans. The Norexans have way more offense than defense. The Miranda 2s have more defense than offense, even though their offense is also good. And then the other ones you see there, the ones that are kind of spiky looking, the Dominion ships from LIMON, those are C-17s, a glorious ship. They're medium range, they have a beam and a torpedo, they deal bonus damage to stations. Their big thing is one of their specials increases their defense by 100 for a few seconds, like 8 seconds. So they can become very, very tanky for just a few seconds, which is very difficult to micro. But if you micro it well, it's beautiful. And then they have an ability that lowers your rate of fire, but it only hits a few ships. And then their final one is they have an artillery range beam attack that's super nice. So we were kind of focusing them, but you had to be careful because if they activated their special, you don't want to shoot at them. And you see there, this is whenever there's Borg on the enemy team, it's a very hard decision because you're like, well, do we stick with it or no? And actually the prime sphere drains energy from things it hits. So if I'm shooting at a C-17, I might drain its energy and it might not be able to use its special. Big brain. So, but you can see here, like I had my eye on. I mean, I only had 2 ships to micro. That is one of the advantages a Borg player has. At any given moment, your opponents are microing 15, 20 ships, multiple classes. You're microing 2 or 3 ships, so it's very easy. And you see there, yeah, so I threw down the nanites because I had just gotten here. And I had the spheres, like the spheres were always ready to retreat. And they actually put a lot of damage into both of my spheres, which I immediately recovered. So my spheres, like, I tanked well. I think they did their job. They helped kill a few things. They put their damage in. It wasn't super high damage, but it was pinpoint damage. It was damage that killed things because I was shooting at one target. And then when I was getting shot at, I ran away and I regenerated, and it was too much and they lived. So I don't think I lose a ship this entire game other than scout cubes. So, oh yeah, and that was when I looked over and I was like, oh shoot, I have too much dilithium and titanium, and I just started giving it away because my connections were going to be down for a while. And here we see Star Master Prodigy he was building more large yards just to handle all the money. We decided he was going to build more than he could, he wasn't mining enough because he only has 2 dilithium moons at this point. And I'm on 4. So I have double his income, just about. And that was when he was like, well, I can't support these yards, but if you just keep feeding me, I can build out of them. I was like, oh, cool. And you'll also notice I keep on throwing down nanites a lot because nanites reveal... Oh yeah, there's that holding beam to try to get this guy. Nanites reveal cloaked units that fly through them. In fact, it disables weapons, which forces them to decloak. So... Oh yeah, that's right. There were 2 scimitars. So I throw down nanites sometimes just in case there is a Norexan. Because as I mentioned in the previous game, my diamond can dive very fast if I'm not watching. Like in fact, I got really scared right here. I was like, oh shoot. But I got engine disabled on both of them. If the diamond gets caught in the middle of a fight, it's dead. Or if the enemy decloaks a fleet surrounding the diamond, 5 or 6 Norexans can kill a diamond in 6 seconds if it's caught there. And that's why I throw down nanites, because that's my cloak detect. I'm just throwing down nanites in case they're nearby, and you'll see, yeah, I'm constantly there. The sphere was taking damage again. Star Master Prodigy has the B5 battle cruisers, which are the slightly smaller looking Dominion ships there. In this version, so they have fighter craft they spawn for free, but it takes a little while to spawn all of them. And then their cost is very low. They cost very little dilithium and titanium, but they cost a whole bunch of supply. And their offense is kind of low, but the fighters have good offense and they have good defense. So basically, the fighters will sometimes get auto-targeted by enemy attacks. They'll just get shot. So when you enter battle with a cloud of fighters, the fighters are very useful because they sort of tank shots. They're not exactly StarCraft style fighter craft where the enemy usually, yes, the enemy usually wants to focus fire you, but it's just difficult to do that in this game. And the firepower from the fighters is good, but it's not overwhelming. And they do have regular weapons as well. So in this game, and in big fleet fights like this, in games that are as huge as this, honestly, the fighters are kind of just a blade of wounds. The fighters soak up a lot of enemy fire in the beginning of the fight. And that's good because that's firepower that wasn't going on to your other ships. Although they do give a tiny bit of experience. So if you keep on skirmishing with fighter carriers for too long, the enemy, if you're not killing things, the enemy might start getting rank ups off of all the fighters they've killed. So here, yeah, we decided to dive for a big old fight. We got the Vutpa coming in with all their multi-targeting little torpedoes. That's actually their special. It launches even more little torpedoes, little red dots. We got, what are those? Okay, Keldons. Oh, those Keldons are actually not shooting because they're not facing. The S7 Defender, which they're replacing, it's a forward-firing only weapon. So they got to face the battle to shoot with it. And that's actually, those 3 Keldons you see, those 3 orange ships flying up, those actually have a lot of firepower if they had been turned around and shooting, yeah. And they also have access to an engine disabling ability. I hadn't remembered that. I don't think he ever used it, because that would have been really nasty against my stuff. Yeah, I don't think he ever used the engine disable. But as you see, yeah, my spheres dive in, do some damage, take some damage, and then run away. And every single time Nanites comes off cooldown, I throw it down, and that disables. It doesn't disable all their engines, but it disables 1 or 2 of them, which makes it gives you the most horrible decision to make. Like, do we try to retreat and leave 2 or 3 of our ships behind because their engines are disabled, or we just stay with the whole fleet? I guess the scimitars were actually doing kind of similar to my stuff, though. Like, every once in a while they get shot at, and if they get shot at too much, they just cloak and run away, and they're fine. Although the scimitars can rank up, so if they stick around too long, we're in danger of them getting rank ups and getting really nasty. I didn't check exactly how much, what ranks the 2 scimitars got. I just know that neither of them died in that fight, I'm pretty sure. There we go. So I was able to get my 2nd diamond, and that's... So yeah, that was our fight. Man, a lot of stuff died. Most of it was Vutpas. Because in any team fight like that, there will be a little bit of auto-targeting, but a lot of the time, the stuff that dies will be the stuff with the lowest defense on each side. So if you're going into a big team game and you've got small Klingon ships, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to tell you this, but your entire fleet's going to be wiped out in like the first 20 seconds, and then you'll just be dead and your allies will be fighting because you'll have the lowest defense. And it wasn't small ships, but I hadn't noticed at the time, but this is really what happened with WarpCore. Like, WarpCore lost a ton of Vutpas because they were the lowest defense on our side. And on the flip side, though, we actually blew up almost everything. Like, I think we got all the Miranda 2s, we got the... Keldons, which are the S7s. I noticed Patawan's fleet wasn't there, actually. He didn't show up. Although we did actually kill a couple of the Nerexians before. Oh, no, wait, he had the scimitars. So maybe they do take a very long time to build, so maybe that used up his yard time and he didn't have Nerexians. So yeah, this was where I was like, I looked and I was like, guys, I'm not going to be able to build another ship for another 10 minutes. So you want all my stuff. I did start building scout cubes, though, because I realized, oh, wait, Drayzon's still been mining on the right side of this map this entire time. Like, Drayzon's been on 4 dilithium moons for a long time. I need to get rid of that. So I started making some scout cubes. So yeah, then the Nerexians show up, and I summarily beat them to death. I was focusing fire quite hard on these, even though there were S2s there, which were also good targets. And then finally we were like, okay, it's time to go. And you see, yeah, there, the Nerexians engaged on the diamond. And this is a really tricky one, because if you give ships the order to fire on an enemy, like if you give them an attack order, they'll kind of stay where they are. But if you give them, like, they won't start chasing the target until it goes out of range, at which point it's too late. But if you give them a move order, they'll attack whatever they want. So it's tricky. In that case, I think a little bit was that Patawan just inexperienced. So if you're watching this, Patawan, just a heads up. In that particular fight, because your team was kind of winning, and because your Nerexians have the bonus against long range, it would have been good for you to immediately fly your Nerexians to the left side of the battle. If you flew all of your stuff over to the bottom left, I would have had to run my diamond away. Because if you got too close to the diamond, you could just kill it, and that would be really dangerous for me. So, and that's a big part of, that's something I love about this game. This game has some serious positioning mind games. If you think you're going to win the battle, you get up right close to your enemy, and you maybe even get behind them, like you cut off their retreat. if you think you might lose, you retreat. Like, you retreat early. And some ships can do this and some can't. Like the B5s and the B8 and the V13s here that we see, they have 360-degree firing. Actually, the B5s don't. The B5s are forward firing, but their firepower is not that high. It's mostly the fighters that do stuff. So, but like the V13s and of course the Borg ships, you just start flying them away. And you're like, you know what, we can continue this fight. I'm just going to be flying away from you the whole time. Like, I'll be retreating while shooting backwards. And when you play that way, though, the enemy might escape because it's easier when one of their ships starts getting fired. You'll notice, like, in a slugfest like that, it's very difficult to get anything out alive. Like, the moment the enemy fleet starts shooting at your ship, it's probably going to die before you could get it to the repair yard because it dies in a few seconds. But in general, like, you can play cautiously or you can play aggressively. You can try to stop the enemy from retreating, or you can try to help yourself retreat. And yeah, these 2 scout cubes I built on the right side did so much work. I think they annihilate like 15 miners over there because Drayzon had set up supply mining and everything. And I wish I'd done it sooner. Oh yeah, transwarp drive allows you to teleport small ships like your scouts. And you'll see here, yeah, so one of the beautiful things about this map, well, beautiful and terrible, is there's only 4 corridors, plus the purple one, but there's 4 corridors between the top and the bottom. So if you can park a scout in each of those 4 locations, unless the enemy's using cloaking, you'll know if they're on the top half of the map or the bottom half, which can be very important, because here you see they decided to go for WarpCore's little expansion there, and they decided not to come down into our area. And this is where I had another like decision paralysis moment, because I kind of wanted to go over and just like, I felt like we couldn't challenge them, so I was saying like, I don't think we can fight this WarpCore. I wanted to go over and kill Drayzon's yard in the middle right, but if I flew too far away, and then WarpCore was like, hey, are you guys coming? And I was like, we don't have a fleet. And then MightyMaster was like, no, actually we have a pretty big fleet. Like, just because we had to retreat from Drayzon's base doesn't mean we're losing here. Oh, that's right. Those were mixed tech Dominion Vutpa, which aren't much better. They get bonus boarding strength, and I don't think he was really boarding with them. But it is an option. You can get them. Let's see. So yeah, at this point, everybody is in super late game mode. So Patawan's building Nerexans, which are kind of the final tech of the Romulan tech tree once you have your 2 scimitars, because that's your limit. Or in Tryptic's mod, Tavares. Everybody's got, well, in Tryptic's mod, I like to think you've got some options, like Salars and Dideridex are kind of viable in the end game. Although their roles are just a little bit different than the Nerexan. So yeah. I didn't notice Drayzon was still building S2s. That's actually... like, they're not very hardy, and they don't deal bonus damage to anything on our side except for the diamonds. So I don't know if the S2s are the best here, although it's so hard to know what to do. This is when I think one of the best force multipliers would be the B8, because I mentioned you use that engine disable bomb in an enemy fleet and you stop them from retreating. And if a B8 starts flying towards my diamond, I have to run immediately, because if the B8 even gets close to me and drops that engine disable bomb, I will lose my diamond. And you guys have seen how hard it is to build these stupid diamonds. So even if you can't kill my diamond, even if you're not planning to kill my diamond, if you start flying towards my diamond with an engine disabling ship, I have to leave. Like, I have to run away. So you can definitely force things like that. Yeah, there you see the 2 scout cubes never got opposed. There weren't even any S2s to come. And then, yeah, so I did go ahead and have my fun here. And the left-hand team, they did blow up several of WarpCore's mining bases, but, oh man. Is that 5? Yeah, WarpCore was mining out of 5 dilithium moons and 4 tritanium moons. So WarpCore was rich. It took him a while to tear down his stuff, and similarly, like, it would have taken a while to tear my stuff down. And you know, I mentioned how I raided the crap out of Drayzon's stuff, but these are middle bases. So, like, he had more mining than me before I started raiding, and when I was done raiding, he had as much as me. So I wasn't really gaining an advantage, although in our fights I think we killed a lot of stuff. And then yeah, so at this point it was like Starmaster, MightyMaster, he goes by Starmaster Prodigy or MightyMaster. We've done this for over 10 years, so names have changed. So at this point, Starmaster was like, look, just forget their fleet. Their fleet can't get back in time. Let's just kill a base. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And I was really afraid to bring my Borg ships around here. I thought I might get caught out. But I sent some scouts ahead. So you may notice like I was microing my little scout up to the north of this to try to make sure I didn't get caught. And then this fateful moment happened. We heard MightyMaster say, yeah, I'll just be And that was the sound of MightyMaster's internet going out. And he might have lost power, or like his internet to his place went down, and we didn't get to see the end. It was so tragic. I feel like we had the advantage. I feel like the bottom team was going to win. Because these diamonds and spheres and those V13s were going to come through. I was going to keep feeding him. I had decided to not do any more diamonds and just go until I got 200 to get a tack cube. And you see here, as the AI takes over, you see they had some stuff here, but not a lot. And I mean, probably the AI sent some of these things in other directions, because the AI sends stuff in every direction. So there were probably more defenders here. So like, they would have put up a bit of a fight, but 2 diamonds, as I mentioned before, in this version, nanites stack with each other. So 2 nanite swarms on top of each other is debilitating for a fleet. 3 or more nanite swarms is like GG. Like, you just have to leave. You have to bait them until the diamonds each cast nanites 3 times, and then when they're out of nanites, you can fight them. So stacked diamonds in team games are really grossly overpowered. They're really hard to fight. And I appreciate that Admiral Nat made them a lot harder to get than they used to be. So I'm actually going to show some more footage of the single player AI game where I beat around a bit, just to discuss a little bit more of what we had. So let's talk about, and obviously if you don't want to hear the sound of my voice, you have other options. You could just mute this entire thing, honestly. So in a situation like this, every race has their own options for how to contribute to these super huge fights. And quite honestly, a large chunk of your ship roster is not viable. There's a variety of ships, and just a lot of them, they're not going to do much in these big battles. So like from the top, the Federation have some options. You choose between one of 2 avatars at the start of game, and some of them are more late game focused than others, which is something I've tried to counteract in Tryptic's mod, but in this version it's still true. So for Federation, Rizner is the more battleship centric late game avatar, because Rizner has access to the Phalanx, which deals area of effect damage, which is extremely powerful in any sort of team game, because the number of ships in play is just going to be so incredibly high. And there's also the Sovereign, which has the area of effect engine disable, and the Defiant, which is a ship we did not see and I did not mention. The other thing about the Defiant is the Defiant has a special ability that disables weapons for like 10 seconds on a target. The time is reduced in Tryptic's mod unless it's a veteran, but if you got diamonds and cubes and stuff, that'll be pretty brutal. Also, the regeneration special requires weapons control. So if you have a regen sphere, like I had 2 regen spheres, you knock out weapons on that, and it can't regenerate. So if you can keep it stunned, like if you can repeatedly weapon disable it, you might end up killing it with like half of the hit points it would have had otherwise, because it never regenerates at all. So yeah, Federation have a very steep tech tree. They have to spend quite a lot of resources to get to that late game tech. Klingons can go for the Negvar. Its defense is just too low for a late game ship, and it has short range, which means the problem is the Negvar does not counter things it's supposed to. like Negvars versus diamonds is a big one. The Negvar is supposed to counter the diamond because it has torpedo weaponry, it does bonus damage to long range, it has a high damage special, and the diamond is long range. The Negvar does not counter the diamond because the diamond can cast nanites and run away, and the Negvar isn't fast enough to catch it. Which is something I've tried to remedy in Tryptic's mod. Also, by giving Negvars way more defense in Tryptic's mod than they have in this version. Similar with the... well, the Norexan is another story. But the other thing Klingons can do is the Bortus, which has the Ion Storm special ability, which deals a whole bunch of AoE damage. And that can be effective, although if you decloak and pop it in the middle of an enemy fleet, you're probably going to lose your Bortus as well. You'll probably build 3 of them because that's the cap. And you're going to lose all 3 of them. And you might not even kill much. Like if you, as I mentioned, if you do a whole bunch of damage, like if you knock out half shields on an entire fleet of enemy ships and then you don't kill them, they can run back to the repair yard and they can repair to full health for free and you never killed anything. Then the Klingons, they have the Chonak, which is a high damage long range cruiser, but its stats aren't super overwhelming. And then they have the Vutpa, which is usually what they choose because it tends to have lower defense than the other stuff in your fleet and it dodges torpedoes so well. So Vutpa are a very common contributor to big fleet fights as Klingons. If you are Romulans, it's usually Norexans. 1 or 2 scimitars. If you're not the Muriel avatar, you can only build 1 scimitar, and you can't build Salars, which is terrible. So that's why in Tryptic's mod I let you build Salars as either avatar. But the Dideridex is not too strong. In Tryptic's mod it's stronger, but it's almost always Norexans. Norexans are kind of the late game answer for Romulans. They deal bonus damage to long range. Like they do suffer a little bit from the Negvar problem, where they don't counter diamonds as hard as they should, because you can get nanited like you see me doing here, and then the diamonds just run away. So if your Norexans are going to fight diamonds, you're going to lose a lot of them, and you got to be ready to dive hard. Now, the Norexans also have a special that increases their damage by a ton for a little while, and I don't know if Patawan was using that in this game. I didn't see. It's a bit hard to tell because they just fire extra torpedoes for a little while. Yeah. In Tryptic's mod, there's also more because you can get the Singularity Implosion, which gives all of your ships near infinite mana or energy for a little while, and so you get your Norexans using their special that turns energy into more shots, and then you give them infinite energy, and your Norexans can put out a lot of shots in a little while, and your Salars can stun things for way longer. So I do like my Tryptic's mod late game Romulans quite a lot. I mean, I'm partial to it. I've worked on it for 6 years now. As Dominion have it pretty well laid out. They just build V13s. They can build the S7 Defenders, which are replaced by the Keldons in this, but they are capped at 5 or 6. And the B5 battlecruisers are also capped at 5 or 6. So you build some, but you can't mass them too much. In Tryptic's mod, I removed the cap, and then I made it so that some special weapons destroy all fighters nearby. Like nanites blow up all fighters, although I need to work on the code for that. But like the Sovereign's engine disable and the IS bomb, various AoE abilities, I just made them so that they kill all fighters. So if someone did get 15 battlecruisers and they have a massive swarm of, 15 times 5 fighters, so they have like 75 fighters, you could just pop an AoE ability and blow up all of the fighters at once, so it's not too overpowered. That was my Tryptic's mod answer. But in general, Dominion are usually going to end up building V13s or C17s, depending on whether they have extra tri for C17s or dilithium for V13s. You'll just see a lot of those. You will sometimes see the Dominion Mixtech Dreadnought, which is a long-range, big ol' ship, limited to 1 or 2. The trick about that one is it has an AoE stun that disables everything on everything nearby for a little while, but it has a short range until the ship ranks up, so you're using it a couple times until you get it ranked up to long range, and then it becomes very disgusting, because if you have 2 dreadnoughts, each of which can use it twice, and the stun lasts for like 10 seconds, then you can stun an entire enemy fleet for 40 seconds, which is really gross. Yeah, so that's... Did I mention? Oh, and then the Borg themselves. The Borg have the cube. In this version, as you can see, there is the tactical cube, which has bonus shot options. And as you saw, I threw down like 5,000 dilithium for that on top of the 200cc, on top of what I paid for the chassis originally. So it's expensive. It was really the CC that held me back. Like, I could have built that way earlier if I wasn't limited by that, and I could have researched more nodes. I think I only got nodes level 3 in this game. But yes, there is the cube. It can also cast nanites. It does a lot of spread fire. And then there's the mass diamonds, just like 4 or 5 diamonds. Those are the late game Borg options, and they're very all or nothing. You know, if someone surrounds a cube, they either kill the cube or they don't. If they don't kill the cube decimates the fleet and then runs. It's awful. But if they do kill the cube, the Borg player is just about done. Although in recent things, Admiral Nat made it so that they do refund some of their collective connections when they die. So you could build another cube using some of that refund if you do lose it. But in general, it's cubes and diamonds for late game Borg. Even spheres are not the most late game ship for Borg. Because you saw me get kind of lucky with them as well. Like, I microed them very carefully, but also they were never focused super hard, and they were never hit with like disabling abilities. If they'd been engine or weapon disabled, they could have died. And I've seen games where people go into a fight with 7 or 8 spheres and just lose them all. It's awful. But yeah, so those are like the super late game options every race has available to them. There are plenty of early game and mid game ships, but you just don't see them used very much except to raid totally defenseless expansions in a map this big. You know, they're more for 1v1 games. It's kind of like StarCraft. Like, although StarCraft is a bit better about it, but you wouldn't build roaches in like a 4v4 of StarCraft unless you really thought you could kill someone in the first few minutes. After that, you would just not do it because you have better stuff to spend it on. So that was my rant. If you want to hear more rants or just watch good games between us and then end the video before my rant begins, check out my channel. I'll have more of these videos coming soon. This is Tryptic signing out.